So in a couple of nights from now, we're going to do our great breakdown of best ball. We're going to kind of ramp up for that. So we kind of wanted to spotlight the UFL while they had the most attention on them possible. So we were going to go live right after the game. We think this is a great time to recap. And that obviously I think it's good because Gov cannot join us tonight. We can almost get a refresher or kind of a glimpse back into Gov's thought about our marinated ideas or thoughts of the game. So I think we're going to get the best of both worlds by doing it this way. We'll get all the guys, instant reactions, including myself, and then we'll let Gov kind of marinate on it and give us his lasting thoughts of it, leading into some of our more off-season content. What did you guys think of the game? Because I thought the game was like a decent game of football, but I don't whenever I commit to watching football, I kind of commit to the idea that it could be an offensive game, it could be a defensive game, but I build my lineups or my thought process around, hey, I'm prepared for this game to go this way. And I thought we did that with our lineup up. I think I got it up on here on the screen. I can also pull up Donnie's. We can pull up some of the reasons I think this lineup won. But ultimately, I thought we protected a lot of things, a lot of outcomes in this game that could have happened. And although, Smith obviously failed like captain and there were some obvious missteps, I thought we had some really good building blocks of things that worked in this lineup. And that's why it ultimately didn't end cash, even though we had some misfires there. What did you guys think?
You go first, Donnie.
I mean, as your local Stallions fan here, I couldn't be more excited about how this game went. I was nervous going into it as a, fan-wise, thinking this is going to be a tough game. It left me very shocked. I mean, I did not expect a Wade Phillips-led team to not score or anything. It was the fact that they turned on each other midway through the game. It looked like Wade didn't say anything to him. He just kind of let it go and just took the quarterback out the game. But I'm shocked that Wade Phillips had this happen to him, as great a coach as he is.
Mm-hmm. I love things like this, that we can build a lineup on Friday. And maybe we didn't do enough during the season. Maybe that's something we can grow to do more of, or as we expand and do more shows. I have no problem ever showing a lineup where we got things right and wrong. I think we've done a really good job of that. Maybe we should have highlighted it or just gone longer into why we did things. But I think we do a very good job of that. Where a lot of shows will not show you their failures or the organic results. And I love that when we were having this kind of pregame discussion. I mean, you were like, I stand on this play, and that's kind of what I was trying to get you to do too. It's like I want you to explain to people why Smith was still a good play, regardless of the results. Because the results, it's almost like when we're watching games, the results are like what the players can affect, and we have no effect over that.
Well, before I get into that, I'll say this about the game too. When you look at the numbers on paper, Chase Garbers went 18 for 26 for 116 yards, 69% completion percentage. His quarterback rating was 106.7. You wouldn't know that a lot of this San Antonio loss was on poor quarterback decision-making by Chase Garbers. And one of the worst quarterback slides I've ever seen to try and get the first down on a third down happened in the third quarter by Chase Garbers, which is you just cannot make that mistake on the professional level.
He made that mistake in the first quarter as well, but he still got the first down.
Yeah,
he still got it.
And hold on, Logan. Let me finish my thought here. And the offensive play calling I thought was absolutely atrocious by the Brahmas. Like I've never seen such conservatism in a championship game like this, where we just didn't see the passing game open up until Garbers got benched for Dormady. Dormady started slinging it. Garbers, I don't understand why he couldn't get the ball more into the hands of more of the receivers, because McFarland had 9 rushing attempts on the ground, but 10 targets in receiving. So they kept just going to him over and over again. And by they, I mean Garbers going to him over and over again, and that just hurt the shit out of that Brahmas offense.
And when it wasn't that, it was a bubble.
Yes, it was either a bubble screen or just a forward pass out to the side to one of the two. What also didn't help too was Kirkland getting hurt. And who was the other guy?
Love it.
Yes, and Lovett got hurt from the running back side as well. So they turned more to like Morgan Ellison to take some change of pace carries, and he did fine with what he had, considering how good Birmingham is at stopping the run. Um, I mean, so yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say about this game. I don't understand either why Wade Phillips let it get this bad for the Brahmas. No, I don't think anybody expected a shutout.
Yeah, I want to shout out really quickly. Speaking of shout outs, Mochi's in the chat. This is the man that we have his link in the description for his best bet. So, like, hopefully you didn't lose too much money on this game or bet on this game or give out any advice in this game because it just wasn't advertised for what we thought. I mean, we thought the Brahmas would be decent. We thought we were going to get more offense. We didn't get that. See, but that's where I think this lineup, we actually did pretty well. I mean, we played both running backs, so we were ready for that kind of slog game. You are right that Garber's disappointed us. Unfortunately, that's happened a lot in the UFL with these lineups and this kind of construction is that we've seen a lot of two quarterback systems. We've seen a lot of people just, they highlighted it during the game that Lou Holtz had to like literally tell himself to be patient and to like calm down because we've even seen coaches just overthink themselves or overanalyze situations. And I do think, to Evan's point, we did see that with the Brahmas and AJ Smith, who has sadly looked very good this season. This was obviously his worst play call game, I feel like.
Yeah. To answer your question, Logan, for the captaining part, I still stand by picking Justin Smith to be our captain as he got 2 targets with 1 catch for 3 yards, which I did catch by the second quarter. Just before halftime, he caught that 3-yard catch. I still stand by what I said in the last episode with the consistent targets he had been getting all year. I did not expect Chase Garbers to struggle to even find him, even after Kirkland and Lovett got injured. It's just one of those shitty things that happened in a messy offense where Dormady had to come in and try to salvage the game when it was too late.
I just want to point out as well when we're talking about the offensive play calling. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but what did we see? 1 pass by Garbers that was over 20 yards? 1 attempt? And it went right through Kirkland's hands. I mean, he had it. He just, good defensive play and stripped it out. Is what it is. You move on. But they never went back to it. Not a single shot play after that, I don't think.
Well, that's why I'm glad we can almost have this like live interaction because I feel like when we were having, a text back and forth and having communication, things that get lost. My whole point was with Evan was as long as we can stand on the emotional reasons we do things or the reasons we play things or even the reasons we care about, this league. It's very clear that we cared about this league. I mean, we supported it every week. It obviously was an advantage for us because it allowed us to promote, things like Mochi's best bets, and it allowed us to, get seen on YouTube where most people weren't covering it as serious as we were. And that's part of the reason we're going live now is because we felt like we could give you a good, breakdown of what happened in the game because we watched it and we know what we should have expected. You are right. We expected more from the Brahmas. Guess what? We probably should have gotten it. And in fact, I lost a bet today, a prop bet, because I didn't think the Brahmas should have been the underdog, but I think they closed at the underdog at plus 169 or something, and I'm like, that's too much.
I will say too that the Brahmas' longest catch was 23 yards, and that was done by Katie Cannon.
Yeah, and that was after the pull, right?
I believe that was when Dormady checked in. Yes. So I don't think it was Marquez Stevenson's longest catch either under Garbers because his was 17, and I think that was with Dormady.
Yeah, was with Dormady.
Which means the longest pass didn't come until the fourth quarter, which is it's not. First of all, it's not expected. It probably wouldn't play out again that way. Like I say, I can even give you an offensive coordinator breakdown and tell you AJ Smith has been super aggressive up to Evan's point, and for some reason they clammed up today.
I should say that Garbers' longest pass was 17. I can't remember if it was to Calvin Turner or Marquez Stevenson. I'd have to go back and look.
I don't even care about completion wise because that includes some rack as well. I just want to. I'm talking just attempts in general. I mean, he just did not want to attempt it downfield, or maybe it could have been some he didn't think his line would hold up long enough. I didn't exactly see the line failing him.
I didn't either.
That's what kills me. The line was holding up about as well as you can against Birmingham, and they had a recipe to beat them already. Wade Phillips, 25 points on his defense. Part of it is turnovers happen in short field, but he didn't defend Martinez well at all. Martinez kind of just did what he wanted to and picked apart the defense.
Basically, yeah. Garbers and Dormady both took 1 sack each. So it's not like Garbers was getting nailed all game.
Yeah, no. And the sack that Dormady took, let's not forget, that is him rolling back, and he just tripped on himself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Which is why we play the defense in this kind of role, because we're playing for that consistency and that safety. We knew the defense was going to get points. And I feel like we almost doubled down on it very smartly by playing the 2 running backs, because we were prepared for whatever. This lineup said no matter what happens, with this lineup, we're going to get points. Like, we pretty much played that. So if one of those quarterbacks would have had a spectacular game, I feel like this lineup would have failed. But as long as they have a median game, this lineup does pretty well. Now, obviously, garbage totally was a complete fail. That was a garbage play. But because we had enough right, we got there. And I think we got there because this league isn't very popular. I think it was like 10 or 20 lineups that had no players, meaning they were reserved for championship reasons, probably reserved on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Father's Day happens, people forget to set their lineups. There is part of an edge to that me and you, Donnie, whoever it is, can grind, on Father's Day Sunday. Like, us being able to grind and do, these deep dive research shows, as dedicated as we have been, that pays off. That dedication pays off for, small niches like this one.
Do you want to pull up my lineup just so we can get a different look at something else?
We can. I was going to say, I pulled up Mochi's comment again. He said he couldn't stay long, and it reminded me to ask you guys, do you think this was a good showing for the UFL? Like, assuming that most people probably haven't watched much UFL content, like, what do you think this game did for the promotion of next season?
I think it's honestly more hurtful than anything else. Like, seeing that there's one team that's dominating the league, which if you're out of context, a lot of people don't know, it's not the same team as year 1. It's definitely not the same team as year 2. And, it's just good coaching and, preaching that mindset of coming together in this one season we have together to try and be the best. Right. That's the thing about this league that I like the most. Like, a lot's going to change every year. Guys are going to get real NFL shots. And this next year will be the first year of real consistency we have with a rookie draft and not a full league redraft.
See, I agree with you. I kind of like that format, that kind of, seasonal change, kind of, embracing that it's a development league, almost cheerleading people to get NFL chances, to go to play for preseason rosters, whether it be at Bates with the Lions, kicking opportunities, what have you. Like, all this is great, but sometimes people they have a very short attention span. And if the game isn't great and it's your championship game and people are watching because they heard Kurt Warner advertise it on, a Fox morning show or what have you, and he's finally there and you got this big moment for the casuals, and then we get a game like this, I can see how it could hurt. I agree with you. Consistency is what I care about, but we kind of need both avenues to be successful so it continues. I don't know if this game was that game, if I'm being
well, I will say, I think having Tom Brady come in at the second quarter, because that's going to pull views no matter how you look at it. If people are going to watch because it's Tom Brady's first time in the booth, he didn't do much. I said it in Discord. I probably gave it a B grade. He wasn't expected to do much. He didn't get much of a role. They just kind of kept on going to him to have him repeat the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. It was fine. He didn't stutter much. That's all that really matters.
I think Evan wanted to get in there. Evan, what was
I was wondering if you were going to care about what I have to say too, but I've said this before in other episodes, and I'm sure you're going to be tired of hearing me say this. What's hurting the UFL right now is that there are only 8 teams. 3 of them are in Texas. So the fact that we just have such a limited user base of people to care about these teams when they may not necessarily be in your market, that's always going to be a hard sell. You have to get expansion teams in order to get this product to improve. And I think they put some good money into this championship game, especially just because I wasn't expecting pyro when the championship trophy was presented to Birmingham. So I think it's a good start. I don't fully agree with Donnie pertaining to this championship game hurting the product. I don't think anybody expected a fucking shutout. I mean, you could say that about other Super Bowls where it was a lopsided victory too. But
for the first one where people are trying to get the attention to the league, I do think it hurts. And
well, Donnie, let me pull up this comment. We can react to it. I mean, Moshe is a guy who hasn't watched any UFL content. Like, I know we're on the outside, right? We're on the borderline. We cover this on a weekly basis. We obviously had a gambling angle. We're betting on sports. This was kind of the WNBA moment where it's like, I love basketball. I can obviously apply what I know about basketball and use it in this niche sport. And I feel like we did that with this UFL when we launched. We're like, hey, we're football guys. We can provide a service. So there is some of that. But also, to your point, Evan, the pyrotechnics, the robot dogs, the fact that Tom Brady's there, that all matters to the casuals. That matters nothing to me, but it matters to the casuals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tom Brady getting eyes on the product is that's a great invite to accept. I mean, Fox and ESPN have both done a pretty good job presenting the game, even though I think ESPN's website needs to do a better job talking about the UFL, but that's another story.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and like I said, if we can get more than 8 goddamn teams in this league, it's going to be even better.
Well, they've even experimented. I mean, it was on ABC as well, so it's in the ESPN umbrella. But they've even talked about maybe next year doing some work with Disney Plus. Having the Garcia, having that we embraced all kinds of people atmosphere. Those are all good. Like being on broadcast television, that's all good. But at some point, you got to have that. You got to attract both people, and I think the only way to do that is consistency. You got to have good football, but then it's also got to have enough casual interest to keep people into it.
If I'm not mistaken, Logan, you did send us some about them thinking about doing Friday Night Football as well next year, right?
They claim that they're going to do that. That's not an experiment. That's not a, hey, we want to do it. It's a wish list. It is going to be a thing. That is the Disney Plus kind of edition. They're thinking about maybe doing that game specifically on streaming.
If they keep it in the spring, that would be brilliant, because if they were in the fall, if we ignore the NFL, that would be stupid, because most high school football takes place on Fridays, and a lot of people aren't going to be around to watch it.
Right.
Moshe, if you're here, why haven't you watched it? Is it a lack of exposure for you? Did you not know what was going on? Are your Friday nights just so busy that you're like, hey, you know what? I love the NFL. I know what I'm going to get when I go to that product. The UFL hasn't done enough for me in that regard.
Well, Moshe also mentioned that he loves the MLB too much right now, and I get it, because it's happening during baseball season.
Right.
If you follow a good baseball team, yeah, you're going to be more invested in that than a brand new spring football league with a limited audience right now. I'm checked out of baseball personally, because the Cubs are mid and the White Sox are getting ready to move to Nashville, probably. So I don't give a shit about baseball right now.
Yeah, I see. That's the thing. I have no sport other than basketball and my Celtics to care about. So,
no Red Sox?
No, right. I only watch the Red Sox if they make the playoffs. That's the only time I'll give them the time of day.
Well, this kind of speaks to like our podcast growth. When we first did it, we were experimenting with hosts. Some of it didn't work. Some people thought I needed haircuts. Some people wanted me to have better lighting. And I'm like, look, unless I can have an organic, emotional conversation, I could give a crap less if I have combed hair or not. So there was just some. But one of the best things me and Gov did was we talked 2 sports, and we were like, what can they learn from each other? So I guess I'd flip it back on you. What can spring football learn from baseball? Like, obviously, baseball is somewhat successful in the spring. So, like, what do they need to do in terms of exposure to, like, help the league? Anything?
Just expose what they need to do differently, honestly, is like Google does not do them any favors on search engines. They need to figure that out.
Yeah.
And same thing. ESPN needs to be better as well. I think Fox does a fairly good job promoting the UFL. Maybe you guys disagree with that. I think Fox does the best at it.
I agree. Fox has done terrific.
And especially, you're bringing sources like Brady to that championship game, which they did not have to do. And I'm sure Brady was excited for it just because, first time, getting some experience under his belt, real experience, that isn't like Peyton Manning's show on what is it, Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think it's one of those things where he could have waited. I mean, he's Tom Brady. He could have shown up anywhere. But when you show up on a platform or a telecast that needs your kind of exposure so much that they'll glad hand to you or they'll cater to your experience, that is a perfect way for him to get exposure and experience. First of all, the pressure's off him because he knows the viewership's not where it should be. He knows that, he's doing Fox a favor or, hardcore football fans like us a favor. But by doing so, he is getting that platform, experience. And so it's a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, I like Moshe's idea down here where they need to advertise. I think where you start is that all 8 markets have to have advertising on radio, TV, newspaper, wherever you can get it. Tell people about their own teams in their city, because I would not be surprised if most of the city don't even know they have a fucking UFL team.
Right. Well, and I brought this up. You talked about it a little bit, Evan, how they poured in a lot of money, regardless if they've gotten the viewership they wanted, regardless if they've, totally sold out every arena. Sometimes you just have to pretend. You have to raise yourself up to the expectation of what you want to be, even if you're not there yet. So you invest in the prime attendance. You invest in a trophy looking good. You get Kurt Warner to come.
Yeah.
And then you earn profit later. Netflix did all the same thing when they first started. The first 5 years of Netflix, they lost money. But they're like, we're going to keep reinvesting in these movies because we know eventually if we can catch on, it's going to be huge. And Moshe mentions it here again with social media. I think that's a very good point to kind of bridge together his marketing. You can't market like everyone else. Maybe you can't go on Good Morning America or a Fox pregame show and market the same way, because guess what? That 60-year-old man watching the NFL, Tom Brady pregame show might not be your audience. You might have to go out and get a younger audience, i.e. Donnie.
I just want to point out too, with the Brady thing, it kind of meshes perfectly and the timeline worked, and it's Brady's first time getting some experience under his belt. With Kurt Warner, another very fortunate situation for the UFL where his son's playing in the game. So right. It just, when things work out, and I'm sure Brady didn't make much money doing this game. I'm sure Kurt Warner didn't, was kind of there more for his son than in his job.
And it's one of those fortunate things, Donnie, to your point. You can easily just say, look, he's there for his son. Guess what? It's Father's Day. Some things just fall into place.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it was to me. It's like, it worked out so well for Fox. And I get it. If it was on ESPN, they wouldn't have had the resources of such a big name son playing the game. But they did it. They did a good job.
Yeah, and for whatever reason the NFL does that, whether it's by refereeing or whatever reason people want to choose, like Moshe just said here, there are a lot of people who are fed up with the NFL, whether it's referees missing calls or just, or maybe they don't like rule changes. Yeah, get them toward the UFL to give that a try. I mean, the UFL, I think, is still doing fine on its own as a professional league. They're going to be stuck with people thinking they're a minor league when it comes to football because they don't have NFL talent. But that's just something you have to live with and just keep pressing on. I mean, get in some cities that don't have a team anymore, like San Diego and Oakland, and let's go. Keep going.
Well, and I'm gonna have a little rebuttal to that statement, because they definitely do have NFL talent playing in these games. There are guys who are getting. There's been plenty of guys already who have gotten their NFL contracts, and the Stallions are going to have at least 5 guys poached, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah,
along with San Antonio having a couple guys poached.
I was talking about across the board, not necessarily individuals. We already saw David Davis and Hakeem Butler are already being sought after by NFL rosters.
And the Michigan kicker going to Detroit.
Yes.
There's plenty of examples.
Sailors is also getting some run as a running back with the Giants. So we're seeing it in all skill positions. Go ahead.
And I want to say too, as well, when we're talking about how the refs are making bad calls and stuff, that's the thing the UFL does better. The referees, maybe they're not better, but they have to be held accountable. They are on TV. We hear their conversations. Mm-hmm. They're being held to a certain standard. And if they do make that mistake, they have that super challenge, which is, the most unique thing probably about the league, where you can challenge anything once. If a team misses that bad, or somebody misses a bad call, you can fix it.
You know,
Yeah, I hope the NFL copies that too, because it's such a good idea.
It really is. It's so innovative, and I get why the NFL doesn't think of it because it's not something you probably would ever think of. You get football a certain way. The NFL even experimented with being able to challenge like pass interference for a little bit. It failed. I think that's turning to something like the Super Challenge is the solution.
Donnie, I'm getting older, but correct me if I'm wrong. The XFL did have Friday night games last year.
I don't know.
I think they did, but to that
I
point,
was always more of a USFL guy over an XFL guy.
Yeah. A few comments ago, Mochi was even mentioning how people have different lives. People have different religious beliefs or political obligations or even family obligations. You might have your son plays baseball, and Friday nights is a no go for you, and Saturday morning is a busy time for a caretaker. And so, like, just having different options and different availabilities to your sport to be on, hey, maybe you can't watch a Sunday, afternoon, but you know what? We have a Friday night showcase game too. I think that's all valuable.
The XFL, even in 2001, had their games on Saturdays and Sundays, not Fridays.
Right.
I'm very happy with how this league was. This is when I look on this season is such an astronomical success. I just it really gets me ready for this preseason. I feel like I care more about preseason now that I watch UFL guys. I'm invested in the players.
Yeah. Well,
I know who I'm getting now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's a great point, Donnie. Mochi again brings up again. It's you want consistency to know what you're getting, but you also need enough flexibility to say, let's try something a little different. That doesn't mean let's get crazy and throw the baby out with the bathwater here and do something so outlandish that no one's going to appreciate it. But I do think there's a balance between, hey, the NFL is copying us because we are doing some things really well, and we need to lean into those things. And then, hey, we're not going to follow the guidelines of the NFL or a professional league. We're going to do things on the fringes a little bit because we are a more potential-led league. And so I think they have to balance the two out to find the balance constantly. And I think
they don't have to copy the NFL. What they're doing is already providing good quality football, even with talent that isn't going to cumulatively match what the NFL has total. And that's fine.
And sometimes they like what I mean by copy is sometimes they're going to lean into that NFL, exposure or be like, hey, we're Fox. We can call up a Kurt Menefee. We can call up a Kurt Warner, and we can lean into those connections. It might be cringe. You might say like, oh, why do they need Tom Brady? Guess what? It gets people to watch,
Well, and Tom Brady honestly needed them in that moment too.
Yes.
So I don't think Tom Brady will be back, but it does lead into Tom Brady's character of, he always knew the name of everybody on the team and he always had a relationship with those guys. So I think it's the perfect guy at the perfect time. It lined up so well.
And I just said I didn't care about presentation, but I do a little bit. Give me just a minute. I'll turn on some lights. It got really dark in here all of a
sudden. we got to see that glorious beard of yours, Logan.
That's right.
You wouldn't know it based on my UFL lineup picks all year, but I consider myself a Ricky Person Jr. stan, and if he gets summoned by the NFL and signs an NFL contract, I'm going to be sad to see him lead the UFL.
Yeah, I mean, he is like, I'm trying to think of a good player comparison because he isn't he's probably like the James White of this league, where if you got a connection to him, you're gonna just love the guy. Mm-hmm. Not the greatest runner. He has his games, but that receiving threat out of the backfield is so special.
Oh, he's the best at it of all the backs this year.
I mean, there really is a lot of special, talented guys in this league, and that's what the worst part of it is I know a lot of them are going to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, but look, we talked about it at the top of this show. The Tom Brady effect is real. Like Mochi admitted, he didn't watch much of the UFL. But just like, oh, Tom Brady was there, that instantaneously has a kind of grab and pull attention. We can hate it, but it works,
He is taking Greg Olson's spot.
Yes, Greg Olson's spot. And I have a question for the both of you. Anthony McFarland pretty much put that San Antonio offense on his back today. Does he get another shot at the NFL?
He might.
He could. It's all in the air for me now at this point. There was a number of guys who really didn't even have crazy games. I think Kirkland didn't play well at all for a couple weeks, really. But he's probably getting an NFL spot.
To answer your question, though, Evan, I'd have to know, and this would be fun, but I have to know what you mean by NFL. Like, what's considered a good, successful NFL exposure? Are you talking about preseason? Are you talking about NFL, like, active day roster? Like, what level of success are we talking?
Well, my question, I believe I worded it like, does he get another shot at an NFL roster? Meaning that, does he at least get called up by the NFL to get some preseason action, see if he makes the final 53?
Maybe I'm being a bit of a UFL homer here, but I do think 80% of the league get a preseason look this year.
80%?
I really do.
I think that I'm not that high, but I really do think it's probably about 40% are getting calls.
Yeah, 40% would be more realistic. I'd be surprised if he was in that high, too.
I preface it by saying it was exciting, but here's why, though. These players are in shape. They have exposure. They have game film. Like we always talk about, like how often we see hamstring injuries get pulled in the preseason because the players are just warming up. These guys are literally coming off of just playing, professional competitive football. Yes, it hasn't been seen, but like their hamstrings, they've been around professional training tables, things like that. I do think that matters.
I'll say this about Adrian Martinez too. I think he's been pretty damn good in the UFL this year. Mm-hmm. His completion percentage sucks, even in the UFL. I don't think that translates well to an NFL roster.
I don't think Martinez gets a single shot.
And I mentioned it.
And it's funny because he's the MVP.
Yeah. Well, I kind of mentioned it. I'm glad we can elaborate here. Some guys are really available. Their skill set is just available to a league's format, right? So when you don't have the best athletes in the world, like any sort of athletic performance or profile that's extraordinary is going to shine. So because he is such an athlete, it's going to highlight even more in a league like this. Where in the NFL, it's like there are so many athletes so you have to be good at other areas. And I feel like he is so good at being an athlete, but it's always been his problem is his passing completion rate has always been a problem for him.
Well, he's Tim Tebow, essentially. Like, he might even be a better athlete than Tim Tebow, but that's what he would be in the NFL.
Definitely more competitive. Like, he's been willing to take on roles. I mean, he transferred in college. He's tried different things as well. So he's not beholden to just being a traditional quarterback. Go ahead, Evan.
Can Adrian Martinez play tight end?
Well, that's what I'm saying is he would be willing. But he would be willing to do that in all sincerity. I do think there is value to that. The fact that he was willing to go play in the UFL.
That's why I had to ask about the Tim Tebow comparison, because if he can play tight end, okay, maybe you have a point there.
Well, even look at Jordan Ta'amu, who played in this league as well.
Not Ta'amu.
But he's played in the XFL. He's played in the NFL. He took a cup of coffee preseason chance with the NFL. Like, when you're that talented and you can't quite get there, you're on the fringe, you have to dedicate yourself on a level that most people are not willing to stand out. And so I do think Martinez could play in the NFL. I kind of agree with you guys, so it's not at quarterback.
And another guy we haven't spoken about, we don't really talk about the defensive guys at all, but I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. The linebacker, 2 forced fumbles, 9 tackles.
Mm-hmm. Was it Tizino?
That might be it. I think it started with the T, but Tizino. Did you say Tizino?
Kayava Tizino, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Tizino. That's right. I mean, he was incredible, and he's had, a spot on the Niners last year a little bit. I don't know exactly when he got cut. The guy's going to be in the NFL next year, no matter how you look at it. He played so well, he's going to probably make a 53-man roster at the end of the linebacker row.
He finished the season number 4 out of all defensive players with total tackles. He had 70. The leader was 78, so he's up there as an elite tackler.
Yes, and he, if you add his playoff stats, 79 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
He was incredible this game. He was incredible last game. I got to see it in person. He moves like an NFL guy. I'd be shocked if he's not on a roster and makes the roster.
Yeah, at least as a backup.
Yeah. Well, I love
And
that.
he's turning 27 soon.
He should be in his prime by now.
Yes.
I love that we use this kind of show as an opportunity to show a wealth of knowledge here between plays that we wish we would have seen more often. Like we wish we would have got more from the Brahmas offense. Things that we did see. Maybe we should have broken down the lineup more. But I do think these kind of conversations provide a good glimpse into things like best ball when we're breaking down what we want to happen, who's the underdog, who's the rookie that no one's talking about yet. I think all of this is good practice for that kind of moment. Like that way, if Hakeem Butler does make it to the Panthers and he does play week 1, I don't know. It's just kind of a cool story of, hey, I followed that guy when he was playing, with A.J. McCarron in the spring.
It might not even be the Panthers. He was getting calls from all over the league, including the Lions, the Jaguars. Like a lot of the cat teams were calling him.
And that's
He was getting catcalled.
Yes, he's getting catcalled.
Yeah, exactly. But that's an example of a guy that I just feel like has the NFL pedigree and ability and it's just going to translate. But we talked about where Martinez could take advantage of his athleticism. Butler's got to get better at other things other than size. Obviously, his size in a league like this is going to stand out. Like he's going to be a giant amongst men. But the thing that's always stopped him in the NFL is there's a lot of people that are big. There are corners basically that can cover him in the NFL that couldn't cover him in this league.
And I just want to point out another guy that we haven't spoken about. He is important to spring football, and we're not going to get the chance to talk about him again. Cody Lattimore, he did end the season on a season-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
That he did say it was his last year in spring football, no matter what. And with that injury, I don't think he gets a shot in the NFL again. I think he deserves his props. He did put a lot into these spring football leagues, and he was a hell of a player when he played in them.
I do agree with that, and I love guys like that are like, hey, you know what? This is no nonsense. I'm just going to be a hard grinder my whole life. I'm not going to do anything too bad. I love football. I'm going to just play football as hard and as long as I can. You haven't heard anything too bad about him off the field. You didn't hear about him saying he was the best player. He just did his job, and I appreciate that kind of blue collar mentality in a sport, in a world that doesn't always highlight that. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Is there no shot that Lattimore goes back on his word now that if the NFL doesn't call him?
I highly doubt it. He was pretty convincing early on that he was done after this year. It wasn't worth what he's putting on his body to make the amount he's making when he's set for life at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say he did kind of set up that maybe the NFL would be a chance. I think would be his one exception, and we could all understand that because he talked about the financial ramifications, for his family, his body versus the money, and I think that's a very good discussion that probably we wouldn't have talked about had we not watched the UFL. So that's the cool stuff for me emotionally as well. It's all these inner conversations we have. Who knows if Donnie is able to have such a good experience for as cheap as he did by being a fan of the Brahmas and go if you would have paid NFL tickets for that experience, Donnie, you would have paid a lot more.
Yeah.
So
the Stallions game that I went to cost me $22. To go to a WNBA game, it is cheapest $40. So
yeah, for good seats, that's not bad either.
Yeah, and so some people will be like, well, that's unfair, and it is, but that's how you get exposure, right? So we could say the WNBA needs more exposure. I've been a basketball fan my whole life, but I'm done trying to convince people to watch it. It's we have to also make it appealing, and I think for this league to go full circle is they just need consistency.
Well, to me, I know it's really early to even talk about it, and they're not going to consider it for a while. But if it gets to the point where the UFL does have a Hall of Fame, guys like A.J. McCarron and Cody Lattimore would definitely need a mention because I'm sure there's more if you have any.
You joke about that, Donnie, but
I'm not joking. I'm being serious.
No, but I mean, you think what I'm saying is you think that's a long way away, right? But the UFC was kind of considered human cockfighting just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even maybe. and now they have a Hall of Fame. Like they're taken very serious. Like things can organically happen very quickly. I would not be surprised in my lifetime if we saw a UFL Hall of Fame. Right?
I think like 5 years we might get one.
And we could just see. I mean, we've already seen some acknowledgement by the Pro Football Hall of Fame because it does represent professional football. We have seen some acknowledgement from them, which some people laughed about, but I mean that does help.
Yeah, and unironically, the stadium that the Stallions play in is right next to like the Alabama Football Hall of Fame or whatever. I don't know exactly what they call it. I didn't walk through it at all, but it is right there. So I'm sure they'll get some mention somewhere.
I do have a side point to bring up too. I don't remember where the championship game was played today. During the third quarter of the championship game today, the UFL announced their Offensive Player of the Year, which is Hakeem Butler. I don't know how legit this Twitter account is, but it was mentioned that he got the loudest applause of the night, and he wasn't even there.
Louis. Yeah, it was St. Louis.
Okay, that's why then. Yeah, so of course he's going to get the loudest applause. St. Louis loves their football, and they needed this team for a long time.
And that's where it's really nice for people. When we talk about young, prospects getting a chance, players and fans alike, being able to go to the stadium, getting an experience that's affordable for families, but then also translating that to now you got a reason to care about the preseason. So the more connections you can make, and the more for these players, it's literally putting film on tape. I think that's all valuable. Don't think I forgot. I do have a package. I'm going to try to get that next show. I have a package for Jerry West. I could mention it in passing. I just feel like he needs like a good dedicated amount of time. And then Gov being such a basketball fan, I feel like we can pay the man his proper due respect on a later show. But don't think I forgot about Jerry West. Just his impact on sports is important. So that was a huge loss, I feel like. Is there anything else you guys want to mention tonight before we wrap up?
No, that is it for me. It's just great end of the season.
I am very happy for this UFL season. That spring football for a change is no longer a joke. I think that UFL is getting an unfair dismissal by a lot of casual sports fans in general, just because of the disaster we've had for a lot of alternate football leagues, and hopefully this is the start of a new bright future for football that's not the NFL.
Well, Logan, I do want to say one thing, actually. We can hang our hat on one thing as a podcast. We may have created a lifelong fan in Evan for the UFL.
Well, I'll be selfish and admit it. Like there was a reason that my podcast launched around the UFL, because I knew there was going to be a void in the gap. I knew there was hey, this is a new league. This is organic. It needs attention. And if you're going to be a young up and coming sports podcast with all this vigor and excitement, and I can do things different, and we can go outside the box, you kind of need a dance partner. And so we've been each other's dance partners for a good while, and hopefully that continues. But I've also enjoyed the process and the product very well.
I'll add on one more thing to that point too. I'll let you finish first, Logan.
No, but I was just going to say, I think that's what we needed as hardcore fans is we just needed a start and a stop. Like we were going to like this game regardless, I think, of what happened, because we knew the players. We were invested, but we needed it to come off as a legit thing. And to your point, Evan, I think it came off very legit today. Yeah,
absolutely. And one side point I wanted to make in comparison to other football leagues that are not succeeding on the level of the UFL, the Arena Football League's comeback with how disastrous it's been. They started as a 16-team league and have 9 teams remaining because 7 either folded or just pulled out of the league altogether because of how fucking awful that league is being run. Unpaid players, unpaid hotels and airfare. Like, if the UFL... Could you imagine if the UFL had those problems? How embarrassing that'd be?
No one would watch it.
I mean... We saw it, even though I think it was this year, the Canadian Football League, their commissioner had to sit down. It's a very hard job for sports leagues to be taken serious, but you can definitely do a lot to hurt it. And that's what I mean by today, is they just needed to get through the day without anything catastrophic happening, right? And there's so many leagues that like want to overpromise or overdeliver, and I feel like that's what the UFL did very well. Is they stayed within their lane. They're like, hey, you know what? People will eventually come to see. We'll plan these big events when the big moment happens. That's when we'll have Tom Brady rolled out. That's when we'll do these things. But we're not going to overpromise money we can't deliver on. Like we've seen some other leagues do. Anything else?
That's it. Go
I think I'm
Celtics.
good.
And again, I do want to talk about some Jerry West, but like I feel like that's a conversation that we got to have with Gov, and I didn't want to bring down the mood tonight. So I feel like we'll get to that. It'll be plenty of time to celebrate the man. But yeah, I thought this was a good season. I guess that would be a fun way to talk about it. Who's the one guy? I'll put you guys on the spot. We can go back, in about I don't know when will season 2 be for the UFL? Like next spring sometime?
Next spring, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the one guy that you want to see or could benefit in next year's spring league? You think? Is there an NFL guy?
Okay, hold on. Wait, NFL guy?
Yeah, is there an NFL guy or like a college guy that was your favorite who you feel like could benefit from good tape?
I have one. I'll let you go first, Donnie.
No, you do yours. I'm thinking.
Okay. Velus Jones Jr., wide receiver, Chicago Bears. I think he needs to go to the UFL and get some more experience.
Yeah.
I think he would possibly dominate in the UFL with how good he was at Tennessee for a little while. But even then, like, he wasn't really that spectacular at Tennessee. I think he'd do fine in the UFL, at least as a rotational guy, but he's been absolutely atrocious as a Chicago Bear, and we spent a third-round pick on the guy.
I got a good one as well. Another former Bear. I don't think he's still on the roster. He might be. Equanimous St. Brown.
Yeah, EQ's gone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a player he was, coming out into the NFL. He is a great talent, 6'5", absolute athletic monster. I didn't follow his career enough to know exactly what went wrong, but especially with the emergence of his brother, I think that would be the perfect thing to if he wants to try to get back into the NFL. UFL is perfect for him.
And let's be honest, that's a name that would probably drive us crazy as hardcore fans because like they would just casually lean into that so hard. We hear about it every other week that he was St. Brown's brother, but it would be a cool story.
But we have to admit it. He's a significantly more gifted athlete than his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, Amon-Ra's 5'11", maybe 6 feet. Not the most shifty guy. Equanimous St. Brown is 6'5", blazing speed, just an athletic monster.
Mine is Trey Lance.
Oh, that would be a great comeback opportunity for a Trey Lance.
Oh man, I think he'll just bounce around the league for like another 5 years and be. I
don't think Trey Lance has gotten really a fair chance to even show he could be a professional, even in like his showcase year with college, because that was the COVID year. They only had like one game in it.
He's played like 20 games his whole career since college.
Yeah. I mean, he could get that in the NFL, but that's like the prime guy for me that'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm not a college guy anymore. I'll do this on a because let's face it, it's not on the same level as the NFL, but I think this would be the perfect semi-professional league for him just to dominate.
And can Trey Lance be that much worse than Manny Wilkins?
No, he would walk into a DraftKings, I think, number 1 spot. Like, DraftKings would price him as the number 1 guy just based on the potential.
Yeah, the only question would be maybe Martinez. It might be higher than him.
Donnie, I didn't know if you realize this, but Equanimous St. Brown signed with the Saints a couple of months ago.
He did?
Yeah, he's one of the rotational guys.
He is.
Does he make the roster is my question.
That remains to be seen, but looking at who they have on the depth chart right now between like A.T. Perry, Bub Means, Stanley Morgan, Jermaine Jackson, I think he makes it.
Yeah,
he probably makes it, but I mean, I really feel like there's another level of hit just by playing the game again, going back to the basics.
I agree.
A guy like Patrick Laird, for example, I think has played 9 years in the league and has only been active for, I want to say, like 15 or 10 games. But he's just like one of those consistency grinder types that will like go to practice squad after practice squad, spend some time with Tom Brady and the Bucks, spend some time with the Dolphins. Like sometimes guys are just willing to grind out money, and let's face it, if you're willing to do that and you're a team guy, it's not a bad living being on the practice squad. In comparison to a starter NFL, like salary, it looks like there's a drastic, difference. But like you're playing a game that you love and making some decent money, plus you're being around other athletes. It's not a bad gig.
So we just name dropped a bunch of NFL guys in the last couple of minutes here. Now
Right.
that the UFL is proving that it's a league that can stand on its own 2 feet without having to worry about competition from the NFL, do we see a lot of cut guys want to get on UFL rosters rather than turning that down?
Yes.
I think that's an important point. I think that's the kind of fun excitement of season 2 or season 3 or like a sustainability of it. It's like, okay, so fans like Mochi, we might have been a fan of him tonight, but how do you make players want to come play in your league? It's that consistency. Hey, this wasn't too bad. I know this guy. I used to room with him in college or whatever. He said the UFL wasn't too bad. The Rock gave him a chance. Let me go over there too and try it. And then if enough people do that in a migrated kind of way, then we all benefit. I think that's a very good point.
He's not the only name, but a guy that probably is the biggest name in one of the biggest cities you could have this situation. Turpin for the Cowboys, he was a USFL guy, and he's turned into a guy who's not just even a return specialist anymore. He's on the field. They clearly believe in him in Dallas. Whether we want to argue how well Dallas is managed is another issue, but
we spoke about the NFL just adopting, we could say stealing, adopting, changing, adjusting, making the game more exciting because of like how the UFL does their kickoffs. That is going to lead to people getting more of a chance. Maybe McFarland gets a chance because they're like, hey, you know what? He's an explosive guy, and if we put him in this new role, it could be beneficial.
I think this elevates the kickers in the NFL so much as well, because we're going to see all those bad kickers who are I hate to say bad kickers. I didn't mean that. But, lower level NFL kickers who get cut or hurt, and these UFL guys are going to be so ready to come in and just boot it for you.
There are a lot of kickers that will get long-term yips, and they get labeled as a bad kicker after coming off like a 90% season. I'm not talking Cody Parkey here. I'm talking
Gostkowski did it.
Yeah, Gostkowski, exactly. That's a great example.
Yeah. I'll just say in closing, like I work in the mental health industry, and if you're working with someone in their 40s or 50s, it's different than if you're working with someone in their 20s. Like generationally, we all think and act a little differently. I do think so even as like positions in football will age out, kickers get older, I haven't mentioned the yips, and people work differently psychologically. And I think we've embraced that more than any other kind of sports culture, especially with like kickers or just like these one-off positions. And so I do think there is some value to like having a good backup quarterback, for example. I mean, I don't think people considered backup quarterbacks valuable even like 8 years ago. But now it's like you almost know who your backup is, and you're excited that you have him when you have a good one, I feel like.
Yep, we even saw it in this league.
See, I told you we made a fan out of Mochi tonight.
All right, let's close up shop. We already went a while, so.
Yeah, thank you so much, Moshe, for tuning in. Hopefully, more who didn't contribute to the chat. Hope you enjoyed tonight's episode as well. Have a good night.
We might make Gov jealous if we don't end the show pretty soon. All right, guys, we'll be back.
Peace out, everybody. Oh, wait, that's his thing. Okay, I won't do it.
It's true. Speaking of marketing and good promotion, we said Tuesday, right, for the review show?
Tuesday, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could do Tuesday, that'd be great.
Not the review show. This was supposed to be the review show.
Yeah.
We'll do rankings on Tuesday. Get Gov's quick thoughts on this game if he has any, and then do some rankings discussions on Tuesday. I'm excited. I'm so excited I could barely get it out. But good night, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good night, everybody.